Okay, welcome back to another Crystal Lake interview. And we're talking to the authors of Dark Tide 13, The Devil's Backbone. And I'm going to show you the cover because I just love this cover. So here we go. Isn't that pretty?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so now I'm going to let all the authors introduce themselves now because they can do it better than I can. So, Ronald Kelly, let me start with you.
I'm Ronald Kelly. Been writing horror for 39 years now. Started in 1988. Um, Published in a lot of the small press magazines. Wrote for Zebra Books for 6 years. Stopped writing for 10 years, and then went back to horror in 2006, and I've been writing ever since.
Okay, Laurel, what about you?
I'm Laurel Hightower. I'm also a horror author. I have been writing. I didn't really start keeping track of when I did that, but my first publication was in 2018, Whispers in the Dark, and I've just been kind of going since then. So, I yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be part of the project.
Okay, Red, introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Red Legoe, and I am also a horror author. I started writing in 2011, but I was mainly into children's lit, a lot of picture books and stuff like that. And I didn't really find my way with horror until about 2015 or so. And that's when I really started getting into it. And I've been writing horror ever since.
Okay, so how did everyone get involved in the Devil's Backbone project?
Well, I guess that started with me. In August of 2022, Joe Meinhardt emailed me and he said, would you like to, you know, start a Dark Tide book up? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And so he said, well, pick out a subject that you would, you think you'd like to do, and recruit, who you think would, be very compatible and do very well at that subject. So I picked Appalachian horror, kind of an offshoot of what I usually do. And so Laurel was one of the first names that came to mind. So I asked her, and initially I asked James Newman to to write on the book too, but he he had some conflict with his job and just couldn't devote the time to it. So the next person that popped into mine and Laurel's mind was Red. Um, so that's how that started with me and got the ball rolling.
Okay, so what did you two think when you got invited?
Oh, I was really excited to get a chance to work with Ron. Also James when he was part of it, but I understand, there was a whole lot going on with his job. So, no, I was excited to be contacted, and I loved the the overarching theme of Appalachia and what Ron came up with the whole Devil's Backbone thing. So it was, no, it was really cool.
Okay, so
Yeah,
what
and
about
when I got the invitation from Ron and Laurel, eventually they're like, "Hey, we're going to be doing this Appalachian themed project. Do you want in?" And I said, "Yeah, I absolutely want in." Um, and the Devil's Backbone, this fictional mountain range, runs through Tennessee and Kentucky and the westernmost part of Virginia. They said since I'm a Virginia author, they wanted me to write the Virginia story. And I was like, well, I'm technically like beach Virginia, not mountain Virginia, but I do camp a lot in the mountains. And they said that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell everybody what your novellas are about. So we'll start with Red this time.
Um, my novella is set in the early 1970s, right when Vietnam was it was supposed to be ending. And it's about this little holler that is nestled a little too close to the Devil's Backbone. And there's a water hole in the darker part of the forest where the locals say you shouldn't go, you shouldn't even dip a toe into this water, bad things happen. And so my main character, Martin, he's very science minded. He's a high school graduate, and he doesn't believe any of it. But weird things start happening. More people seem to be under the lure of the water and under the lure of the mountain after his brother goes off to war. And so it's about him kind of dealing with that and trying to keep his loved ones safe.
Okay, so Laurel, what's your novella about?
So mine covers the Kentucky portion, and it's called Spirit Coven. It is set in the 1920s during Prohibition in Arnett, Kentucky, which is a fictional town. And it deals with a coven of bourbon witches who have been living on the backbone on the mountain for innumerable years, making bourbon and various cures for the townsfolk, and kind of utilizing the sort of magic within the backbone, but um, with the responsibility of keeping sort of a balance there, and protecting the townsfolk below from what's really going on there. And then as things do, there things go badly, some people start disappearing and dying, and they learn very quickly that providing bourbon is great in the moment, but doesn't buy you immunity from suspicion, etc. So kind of goes from there.
Okay, so what's your novella about, Ronald?
My story's set in 1880s East Tennessee. It's about two children who go missing in the mountains, and their father recruits the help of a seventh son and mountain shaman named Uriah Coldcreek, and together they take this quest through the Devil's Backbone to find um, to a place called the Netherwild, where uh, the Coveter, the ones who steals children in the mountains, has taken these children, and they have to get them back. So that's what mine basically is about.
They all sound very cool. So, the theme of the anthology, as you mentioned, is Appalachia, Appalachian horror, and the area has a very rich history of folklore. Were you familiar with this folklore in the area before you wrote it, or did you do a deep dive into researching the area? Anybody?
They, um, well, since this is a fictional part of the Appalachia, we had a lot of leeway of just creating our own areas and towns and stuff. So that didn't we didn't really have to dive very deep into actual places and stuff like that. So, um, but as far as I basically write a lot of Southern horror and Appalachian horror, so it was kind of second nature to me, and I really didn't have to do a whole lot of research.
Okay, so Laurel and Brett, what about you? Did you do any research, or were you already familiar enough?
I did some research into specific occurrences, within the area. I actually come from a long line of bootleggers, and the liquor store owner in the story is named after my great great grandmother Georgie. And so I kind of had a little bit of connection there, and I mostly just kind of decided to look into some of the specific like natural disasters in the area, as far as like floodings that occurred. I looked at some. I work for a law firm, and we do some environmental law, and I'm familiar with some like coal mine disasters and collapses and things, and I wanted to look into some of that sort of very specific regional risk, and kind of the stories that spring up around places like that. So it was more just wasn't a huge amount of research into specific folklore, I guess, more about like what would make sense within the region for what would be occurring there and what would have some historical significance.
Okay, so what about you, Red? Did you do any deep dive research, or just
No,
familiar?
no, nothing too deep. I'm not super familiar with the area. I camp in the Blue Ridge and Shenandoah. I grew up in upstate New York, a few hours away from the Adirondacks, which are technically part of in the north we call Appalachia. In the South, it's Appalachia. but um, but as for that portion of westernmost Virginia, even though it was fictional, the mountain range, I did do a little bit of research about the area, just because the Devil's Bathtub, which has an appearance in my story, is an actual water hole that people go and they swim in westernmost Virginia. So
Hmm.
aside from checking the maps and maybe the trails that lead to that, I didn't have to do too much research.
Hmm. Did you have any specific inspirations for any part of your stories?
Well, in addition to looking up westernmost Virginia and that region, uh, I looked at the whole mountain range that goes all the way from Canada to Alabama, and just the whole vast history of it. And so I started digging deep into the geology of the mountains and stuff, and that was really fascinating. And so that kind of inspired a little bit of a cosmic influence in my story.
Hmm. So what about you, Ronald or Laurel? What kind of inspirations did you draw on?
Well, I grew up about my grandmother was a very um, good vocal storyteller. Told me a lot of stories about our family and everything. We have family in East Tennessee up in the mountains. Um, and I kind of drew from some of the stories she told me, and kind of got the right feel for the the adventure I came up with.
Hmm, cool. So what about you, Laurel? What were your inspirations?
I had kind of been toying with the idea of writing about bourbon witches for a little while anyway. It's really surprising how many stories come to mind because of puns in titles. So, Spirit Coven kind of. But I was watching a very I feel like it was maybe Bloody Sunday, some older movie having to do with witches, and I sort of started giggling because there was something like the mask of something. Anyway, I don't know. I was thinking of how like you would turn all of that to be more of like, oh no, hidden in the cask. Anyway, it was a lot of puns. I should have come up with something better as far as I come up with that. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of had wanted to write about that, and I felt like given the setting that Ron had told me about, that it would have a good chance of fitting in with what we were trying to do here.
Hmm, cool. So supernatural elements play a part in all of your stories. So what was your process in crafting these folklore elements into the story while balancing it and grounding it in the reality?
I would love to act like I had some sort of overarching plan, but I feel like primarily what happens with me in life and storytelling is that I start with any story and I say, okay, where can I put ghosts in, or where can I put the supernatural in? So I don't know. I don't feel like it was a conscious process so much as it was just an excitement to build something around whatever supernatural element was going to be in there. So I don't know if it felt like so much of a balancing act as it felt like, all right, you can't include that many ghosts because, some people have to still be living. So
Well, I might disagree with that, but
all
but
ghosts all the time.
anyway, so what about you, Red? How did you incorporate the supernatural elements?
The supernatural element was part of the original plan. Like that was my concept, was the supernatural portion. And so for me, I just had to bring in the people. And it's always like grounding it in reality is always really important to me, and that's with any story, because without that reality, it's almost too fantastical and it's too distant, and it's not until you get to those real things that happen. For my character, it's a brother who is off at Vietnam fighting in the war. And so I knew I wanted to bring that reality of missing his brother and the reality of war, and and uh, and make that kind of the thing that grounds the reader in reality while there's all these fantastic things happening.
Okay. So what about you, Ronald? How did you ground the reality into the supernatural?
Well, if anybody knows anything about my writing, they know I'm a creature feature guy. I like to put some creatures and monsters and some really dark, you know, stuff like that in it. But um, I also like to ground it where the characters react, realistic to it and react in a way that if we in today's world would react to them. So like Laurel, I really didn't have a big plan. I just kind of went with it.
Okay, so there's also a theme of missing people and an investigation into supernatural occurrences running through all your books. Now, was that a deliberate choice to sort of put that running through all the books, or was it just a coincidence? And how did you feel those elements fit into the particular story?
I think it was a coincidence, really, because um, I guess Laurel and Red read my story before. You know, I think I got through with my story first, so I think they got to read it. Uh, you know, while they were in the middle of theirs, I don't think it influenced them anyway. But the the reason I came up with the missing kids, and everything was because, like I said, my grandmother used to tell me stories and used to tell me about children who went missing in the woods and the mountains and all that, and that there might have been some supernatural reason for it and stuff like that. So that's basically where my kind of quest for lost children came from.
Yeah, and mine you at least have a good reason for yours. Mine actually kind of started because like I said, I work for lawyers and they all know what I do and they're all very supportive and kind, but none of them read horror. So they kind of like mess with me some. And the managing partner at our office at the time was like, "Why haven't you killed me in a book yet?" And I was like, that can be arranged. And, so then it became a thing where like everybody was wanting to be murdered in this book. And I was like, I'm gonna have to kill off so many people or have horrible things happen to them. So it just sort of was like this, like, all right, how do I get rid of all these lawyers, kind of a thing. And I, so, it's there's probably 75% of the characters in that are named for people that I work with. But remember, guys, no matter how you die, it's not a reflection of how I feel about you.
So you were literally doing Shakespeare's "Let's kill all the lawyers."
Yes. Yes. As you know, I hadn't thought about that way. I'm going to use that the next time I get that question. Thank you very much.
Okay, so what about you, Red? Why did you go with the theme of missing or investigatory thread?
I don't really know either. It just kind of that's just the way the story went. The mountains have a way of just devouring naturally. It's
Mm.
such untamed wilderness that, and especially if you put a supernatural element in there, people are just bound to go missing. And horror, when it comes to stakes and stuff, I mean, losing people is a huge stake. Missing person, a dead person, those are high stakes, and so it just kind of worked. We have a mysterious mountain, easy to get lost.
Mhm.
So
Okay, so what is the one thing that you think readers will enjoy most about your novella?
I think mine probably the creature feature kind of feel to it, kind of the quest feel about you know. I like to write. Sometimes I like to write stories about a group of people or small group of people that kind of go on this journey to accomplish some kind of uh, victory against the darkness, against evil and stuff. And so that was kind of the first thing that popped in my mind when I started crafting this novella in my head.
Sort of a horror version of the quest novel.
Yeah, kind of.
So what about you, Laurel? What do you think readers will enjoy most about it?
I aside from
the
the sort of
bourbon.
The bourbon, yes, the dead lawyers, all of
Yeah,
the above, but,
dead lawyers and
the
bourbon,
bourbon
yeah.
and dead lawyers. But, aside from I feel like one of the main I think it's just really cool to have them all connected, to have it running through there, so I think it'll be fun for people to travel, in time and space some within that, but, I hope what they enjoy too is part of the sort of like found family sisterhood kind of scenario that I've got put together with the witches, up on the mountain because they're just people, and it's just magic and responsibility and everything affects everyone differently, and found family is a big theme in my writing. So I hope that they enjoy kind of getting to know the characters and figure out the history of why they're there.
Okay, so what about you, Red? What do you think readers will enjoy most?
Um, I I hope they enjoy. I like to bring a lot of. I don't want to necessarily say cosmic, but I'm really interested in astronomy and the science of astronomy. And so I tend to weave a lot of that into my writing. Not always, but it works its way in easily sometimes. And so when I wrote this, there's a little bit of a cosmic side to it, and I hope I hope people will like that blending of subgenre of Appalachia horror with a little cosmic dusting.
Okay, so did you have any difficulties in writing the story, or was it smooth sailing? Did you get stuck on anything? Okay, let's go with Laurel because apparently she has an answer.
I kn Oh my gosh, I just wanted, like, in person again, thank Ron and Red for being so, so kind about my ludicrously late manuscript. And I swear it's not because I didn't start. I swear it's not because I was like, I wrote, I don't know how, like 30,000 words or something and was like, and I hate it. This is terrible. And like, I sent it to them to read. I don't know. I got stuck and I still don't really know why, unless it was just something about not being real clear on how to connect the supernatural elements. I actually have decided that my brain is very recalcitrant and is like, I'm sorry, did you give me a deadline and a specific thing to write about? Well, that's going to be a problem. So that's kind of, I don't, can't think of anything specific that was the issue, but yes, I was the worst member of the group project. I was the one who was late on
No.
everything. So thank you all for being very understanding and kind.
That just happens sometimes, though.
Mhm.
I can't imagine any writer who hasn't been through it, where they have to write something and it's just not coming out. It's
Mm.
just not coming out. You're not quite getting it right. That happens to everybody. And you weren't that late. It was fine. It worked out fine.
Yeah.
Very kind of you to say.
Okay, so what about you, Red? Did you have any problems with the story, or did you have a easy time of it?
No, mine came out fairly easily. I think I struggled a little bit with the characters because my characters are a little selfish in motivations, and so I had to go over it a couple times to work out those little selfish tendencies to make them believable for what they had been through. They're selfish because the mountain has kind of worn them down over time, and they're worried about themselves. But it wasn't coming across that way, so it took me a little while to get the characters right.
Okay, so what about you, Ronald? Did you have any problems?
No, mine seemed to flow pretty easily. I actually only had about six characters in the novella. If you count the creature, the Coveter is one of the characters. I would human characters there were um, five. So I had them fully developed in my mind before I started writing, and they just kind of took the wheel and kind of steered the storyline.
Okay, so what was your favorite part of writing the novella? Do you have a favorite scene or a favorite character or something that just stands out for you as that came out perfectly?
In mine, I have a scene where they go up to see this old granny woman, and I kind of took both of my late grandmothers and combined them into one, and it just kind of um, it, I could remember how they talked, how they acted, and stuff like that, and putting that into the granny woman, and the story is really nice. I had fun with that.
Okay, so what about you, Laurel? Did you enjoy anything about writing your
Oh no,
novel?
yeah, I don't want to make it sound like it was horrible the whole way through. I just was kind of frustrated with myself. But no, there were a lot of elements that I really enjoyed writing. I just liked kind of creating the community on top of the mountain. And as far as characters, Tabby is the youngest sister, from the mountain, and she's fiery, and she's, just kind of launches herself into things and has a very clear idea of what she wants and who she's going to run over to get it. And that's, she was fun to write for that reason, in large part because I'm very much the opposite. I won't ask for a chair if I need to sit down. So Tabby was a lot of fun, and she has some choice words to exchange with some of the townspeople at times, which is fun.
Okay, so what about you, Red? What was your favorite part?
I I really enjoyed there are two characters. I really enjoyed writing the scene where my main character got to experience and see everything he had been hoping to see. I know it sounds vague, but I have to keep it vague because it's it's the it would be a spoiler otherwise. But the point of view that I really liked writing from was the brother who had been through war. He is broken and just he's just a broken person when he gets back, and just diving into that point of view, it's kind of I really like doing that. I like writing people who have been through it.
Yeah, dysfunction is
Mhm.
interesting to write. So, what is it about horror in general that calls to you as a writer?
It's so
Ronald?
versatile.
Okay, Laurel.
It's yeah, it's versatile. It can be like anything, which is, not something I think I realized when I was still under the impression that there were like five people writing horror and they were the ones on, the shelves in the library. There's just it can be used to express almost anything, and to I don't know, it sounds really cheesy, but in some ways I feel like it brings a lot of people together. I got the most wonderful message from a reader the day before yesterday, and she said she hadn't gotten into horror. She was like, well, I got into it really late in life. I was always afraid of it, and then I just launched in, and I love that. I love making connections with people through talking about what scares us.
Okay, so what about you, Ronald? What do you like about writing horror?
Well, I've been doing it for like almost 4 decades now. So, um, horror. I began as a child. I mean, 6 years old, saw Creature of the Black Lagoon, and that did it for me. I just, it's always been a great comfort for me. Um, ev- Pretty much everything all my interests, I had as a child and a teenager, dealt with, horror and science fiction and stuff like that. Um, so, when I started writing, I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to bring what I know to the table, my Southern background and stuff like that. And that's what I've been doing for all the years I've been writing. I've been, representing the South, in horror. So,
So, what about you, Red? What do you like about writing horror?
I grew up on horror. I was 6 years old watching horror movies I shouldn't have been watching. uh, um, I really like that it allows us to explore kind of the darkest, most taboo things about humanity. And a lot of people think that horror kind of glorifies those bad things, but it doesn't. It well, some of it does, but the good horror doesn't. It just faces it head on. It brings to light the bad things so that we can explore it. We can address it and fight it if need be.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, what are you currently working on, and what's next for you?
I am working on the book 3 of my saga of Deadeye Western horror series. It's called Man Eaters, Mummies, and Murderous Maniacs.
Oh, great,
so,
great title.
Love that.
so I'm covering a lot of bases on that one. But it's a fun book to write. It's got a lot of dark humor and it's an idea I had way back in the 1990s, and I'm finally living it. So I'm having fun with that. I've got some of the old zebra books I'm going to be re-releasing in paperback, uh, and I actually got the cover for one, Restless Shadows, which was actually supposed to be a zebra book before they shut down in 1996. Um, so that's the first time it's going to be in paperback. So I'm excited about that.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so Laurel, what's coming up for you?
Um, I have another book coming out through Ghoulish Books in April. It's called The Day of the Door. It is another Trevor Henderson cover, and it scares the hell out of me. And I don't think I'm going to be allowed to keep it in the house, based on my 6-year-old's preferences. But that is a psychological horror, and I really enjoyed writing that. And and I love working with Ghoulish. And then as far as the stuff that I'm working on, I have finally, I got to knock on wood before something happens and explodes, but I'm kind of actually finally at a place where I've cleared my deadlines and I can kind of start working on exactly what I want. So naturally, I have no idea.
Okay, so Fred, what's coming up for you?
I have a book releasing next month on March 15th through Dark Lit Press. It's called In Excess of Dark. And it's been making a little bit of a splash on Goodreads with readers. So I'm hoping that'll translate to to sales and it'll continue to impress people. Hopefully.
Yeah, well,
I,
good
th-
for
I
you.
think that it will.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap the interview up here and I'll let everyone tell the viewers where they can find them. So, Ronald, where can we find you?
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, excuse me, X. Uh, you can find me on Instagram. Um, I've got a TikTok account, but I don't use it because I just don't I'm not as good at TikTok as some people. But also I got an online bookstore you can get signed books through. RKHorror dot bigcartel.com. So if anybody wants any signed books or T-shirts or some of my artwork, they can go there.
Hmm, cool. So, Laura, where can we find you?
I am also on Twitter, though not as much as I used to be. Instagram, Blue Sky. I also have a TikTok. Um, I don't think I do very well at it, but it's fun to occasionally put musings
I
on
think you
there.
do.
I posted a video about cannibalism today, Ron. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm gonna
I'll have to search
lower
that
the bar some, but
Wait, was
um,
it a recipe video?
out.
no, it was almost more of a threat. I didn't mean it that way, but I've just been really hungry lately. But the but also, I mean, if anybody, I love this sort of resurgence of meeting people like out and about at events. So the other places you can find me are Scarelastic. Book Fair, which is in McCordsville, Indiana, on March the 2nd. It is absolutely wonderful. It's a blast. There's going to be a lot of authors there. I will be at Ghoulish Book Festival March 14th through I think the 16th in San Antonio, Texas, which is also a fantastic time. And I'll be at AuthorCon in Virginia, April. Yeah, Ron and Red.
Yeah,
I
well, I'll be.
never get this right. Anyway, we'll we'll all be there in Virginia, Williamsburg, Virginia, August 12th through 14th, I think. So
I
yeah,
think so.
we would love to see you come, come
You
get
said
some books.
August, April.
Thank you, Red.
Mhm.
I was focusing on the dates. I completely got the month wrong.
Okay, so where can we find you, Red?
Yeah, I am at redlegoe.com is my website. Everywhere else, I'm at Red Legoe, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I have a Blue Sky and a Threads account, but I don't really use them much yet. And I do have a TikTok that I'm kind of sporadic with my use.
Yeah, I'm a bit sporadic with my TikTok too, so it seems to be a consensus in this panel on that. Okay, so I'd like to thank you all for being guests today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
You as well. Thank you so much for having us
Thank you.
on.
Yes, thank you.
And yeah, that's it for this episode. And bye for now.